if you would take a second to tell people the story of how, and by the way, I wore the NASA shirt because of the
is
imagery.
That why you wore it?
Yeah, of course.
Oh my God, I'm like falling my glasses off. That is, I did not even get that. I was going to ask you why you wore that shirt.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, wow.
So break
you
it
actually
down.
do your homework.
Oh, of course, Mel, absolutely.
Okay, so let me just take you back. So what you're talking about is the 5-second rule, which has become literally my life's work. And it was all a gigantic mistake. I read up on you too and understand how Quest was born out of misery. The 5-second rule and my life now and my 20-year marriage and everything that I'm doing and the companies that I've built and sold and the company I'm building now, it all comes back to a point in my life that completely and utterly blew. I was 41 years old. I was unemployed. My husband had started a restaurant business, which was his dream. This is actually a funny story. When he got laid off from a big job in high tech, and I think he was really relieved. You know how a lot of us wait to quit our jobs and then we get laid off and we're like, yes. And he said, I'm not going to look for a job. I'm going to go into the restaurant business. And I think I said the most famous lines of our marriage at that point. I looked at him and I said, listen, buddy, inspiration is for strangers. You get your butt back to that job and you pay the mortgage. And again, micro moment where I'm being a jerk instead of being a supportive wife. But that's an example of where when he said he was not going to go get a job, but he was going to start a business, the first thing that was there was fear.
Right.
And so fear was making the decision for me.
God, I love that you can share that though. That's so powerful.
Well, so what happened is the first restaurant was a home run. And of course, what do you do when things are successful? You grow it. You grow it really big. And so they decided to raise some money. And we threw in our home equity line, the kids' college savings. They tried to open a second and a third, and at the same point, a grocery store chain encouraged them to go into wholesale. So it basically got way too big, way too fast, and the wheels started to come off. And they came off so badly that the second restaurant failed, and they held on to it for too long, like a lot of us do. It's another trick our brains play on us called sunk costs. When you throw a ton of time and a ton of money at something, it's really hard to let go of it. And if you haven't done it in business, we all have a relationship in our past, stayed way too long. That was a trick your brain played on you. So by the time that they closed the second restaurant, it was an $800,000 loss. Ooh. I mean, that meant our entire home equity line gone.
Right.
It meant kids' college. I get just choked up just thinking about how terrifying it was. And so I found myself at the age of 41, like just feeling like a complete failure. And so did Chris. And to make it worse, not only had we lost all of our savings, but so many friends and family members had invested. And so there was this real tension between the truth of what was happening and what you had to do in public, because it was a public business. Shame, failure, embarrassment, and the liens started to hit the house. The phone started to ring, and it was nothing but collection calls. And I just remember feeling this tremendous shame. And at some point, I think we all hit that moment in life where things just are not going how you thought they would go. And what's amazing about those moments is we all respond very differently. So my husband, he would spring out of bed and he would head right out that door, 6 o'clock in the morning, and he would go meet his partner and they would go to the bank and they would dig right in and they would face their problems head on. And he's also a smart guy. I mean, he did not want to be in the house when yours truly woke up because I was a raging bitch at that point in our lives. And the reason why is because when you're scared and you're afraid and you're jealous and you're overwhelmed with emotion, it is so much easier to point the finger at other people. That's a decision, by the way.
Sure.
One you may not be aware that you're making, but you're still making it. So what would happen to me is the exact opposite. Is Chris would be gone, the alarm would go off at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I would lie there. And I would think about the lien on the house, and I would think about the bankruptcy that we were facing, and I would think about how much we had fought the night before, and I would think about the fact that I was unemployed, and I would hit the snooze button. I mean, why would you get up when your life is like that? Why would you? I mean, I needed confidence. I needed courage. I was so tapped out. And you know, in the scheme of life, hitting the snooze button is not that big of a deal. But here's the thing about life. None of us wake up and say, today is the day I destroy my life. What we do is we kind of check out because it feels overwhelming. Or we check out because we're afraid. Or we check out because we start listening to self-doubt. And then we make these teeny tiny decisions all day long. And we don't even realize it. Decision to not get up on time, a decision to not eat the right thing, a decision to snap at your kids, a decision to not speak in a meeting, a decision to not look for a job, a decision to not deal with your finances, a decision to not call your parents, like whatever it is. All day long, these tiny decisions that take you so far off track. And then you wake up like I did and you look at your life and you think, how the hell did I get here? And more importantly, how do I get back over there? And you have no idea. And so I was so trapped. And I know from your story, you felt the same way. Like you knew that there was more in store for you, but you couldn't figure out how do you close that gap? How do you find the power that's in you? How do you discover your greatness? How do you solve these problems? It feels so overwhelming when you can't. I mean, I would go to the grocery store and the items would scan and I would be sitting there readying my excuse because there was no way that my check card was going to clear.
Wow.
So I got in this struggle with myself that a lot of us find ourselves in, and that is you get trapped in what I call the knowledge action gap. You know what to do, but you can't seem to make yourself do it, right? I mean, every one of us is one Google search away from a list of instructions that if you follow any of them, it will change your life. But how do you get out of your head and stop thinking about what you need to do and actually do it? And in my case, this stuff was pretty easy. Get up on time, make breakfast for the kids, get them on the bus, start looking for a job. Be nicer to Chris. Don't drink so much. Instead of isolating yourself, pick up the phone and call a friend. Get yourself out into the woods and go for a walk. Start running again. Like all these little things that I was capable of, but I couldn't get out of here. Could not get out of here. And if you're stuck, that's the problem. The problem is you're in your head, you're thinking. That is the universal problem. And it all starts with this knowledge of what to do, and then you hesitate and you think about whether or not you feel like doing it. So for a couple months, I was really stuck. Chris would get up at 6, I'd hit the snooze, and then I'd hit the snooze, and then I'd hit the snooze. The kids would miss the bus. And then every night I'd do the same thing. I'd go in bed. Have you ever had one of those nights? Probably before you started your company, but where you go in bed and you're like, all right, Tom, that's it. Tomorrow, it's the new me. Tomorrow, I'm going to get up on time. I am going to go to the gym. I am going to look for a job. I'm not going to drink so much. It's going to be amazing. The new me, the future me. Woo! Let's do this, right? Then you go to bed, and you wake up 7 hours later, and you're like, I don't feel like the new me. It's the only, that's a stupid, see, motivation's garbage. It's never there when you need it. Ever. Ever, ever, ever. And so here's what happened to me, and thank you for wearing the NASA t-shirt.
Of course.
It's a really stupid story.
It's a powerful story.
So one night, Chris had gone to bed. I'd been struggling. We still had all the same problems. We still had a lien on the house, still facing bankruptcy, still fighting like crazy. I was still unemployed. They still hadn't figured out like the solution yet for the business. And I was about to turn off the TV, and there on the TV, there was this rocket launching, and I thought, oh my gosh, that is it. I am going to launch myself out of bed like a rocket ship, like NASA right here had launched me out of that bed. And I'm going to move so fast that I don't think. I'm going to beat my brain. Now, here's a really interesting point. I talk a lot about your instincts and inner wisdom. And we can get into this a little bit later, but a lot of us talk about the fact that you have a gut feeling. But what all this research that I've done for the book and all the speaking that I do, what I've discovered that's fascinating is actually when you set goals, when you have an intention on something that you want to change about your life, Your brain helps you. What it does is it opens up a checklist, and then your brain goes to work trying to remind you of that intention that you set. And it's really important to develop the skill, and I say that word purposefully, the skill of knowing how to hear that inner wisdom and that intention kicking in and leaning into it quickly. So for me, my brain saying, that's it, right there, move as fast as a rocket, Mel. I wanted to change my life. And I think most people that are miserable or that are really like dying to be great and dying to have more, we want to change. We want to live a better life. We want to create more for our families. We want to be happier. The desire is there. Again, it's about how do you go from knowledge to action. So the first thing in this story that's important is realizing that the answer was in me. And my mind was telling me, pay attention. Could have also been the bourbon. I had a couple of Manhattans that night. But anyway, the next morning, the alarm goes off, and I pretended NASA was there. It's the stupidest story. I literally went 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I counted out loud, and then I stood up. And I'll never forget standing there in my bedroom. It was dark. It was cold. It was winter in Boston. And for the first time in 3 months, I had beaten my habit of hitting the snooze button. I couldn't believe it. And I thought, wait a minute. Counting backwards? That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Well, the next morning I used it again and it worked. The next morning I used it again and it worked. The next morning I used it again and it worked. And then I started to notice something really interesting. There were moments all day long, just like that 5-second moment in bed, where I knew, knowledge, what I should do. And if I didn't move within 5 seconds, my brain would step in and talk me out of it. Every human being has a 5-second window, might even be shorter for you. You have about a 5-second window in which you can move from idea to action before your brain kicks into full gear and sabotages any change in behavior. Because remember, your brain is wired to stop you from doing things that are uncomfortable or uncertain or scary. It's your job to learn how to move from those ideas that could change everything into acting on them.